proxies in Amy's name, though.
Yeah. We have done retroactive letters in the past. And we got John Schulteis is coming in. Great. That's our quorum. So good morning, everyone. People are still joining. I expect a few more people to chime in the next few minutes. Welcome to the April 27th meeting of the UCTC Policy Committee. I'm Brian Slack, for those of you that don't know me. I'm joined here today with our Senior Transportation Planner, David Stoss. Dennis Doyle cannot attend today's meeting. He has a conflict that will prevent him from joining us this morning. He sends his
All right, I'm leaving.
regrets. Yeah. So it'll be a little less interesting for everyone. Maybe a little briefer. We'll see. So this is only the second meeting that I'm aware of in my 10 years here that Dennis hasn't been able to make. And we do have a brief agenda. And I'm sure David's put that up in front of everyone. And we have a few other points to go over, some announcements and such that we'd like to cover with members today as well. So right now I'm going to go through our roll call, and I will name off the municipality. If the voting member present could please state their name, I will then check them off, and then we'll do regular introductions. All right, so Ulster County.
Andrew Emmerich.
City of Kingston.
John Schulteis.
Town of Saugerties. Vern, I know you're here.
Yeah, I thought I saw Leanne here.
And
Oh,
Leanne's-
Vernon, you're the official voting member, so
Yeah, that's
confirmed.
Town of Ulster.
Here. John Morrow.
Thank you, John. New York State Department of Transportation.
Here, Amy McKenzie.
New York State Thruway Authority.
Lissy Philip, good morning.
Good morning. Village of Saugerties. Town of Rosendale. Town of Lloyd.
Brian Jean Walsh, I'm here.
Hi, Jean. Thank you. Town of Lloyd. Fred, I did see you logged on. You may be muted. Town of Plattekill. Village of Ellenville. Town of New Paltz.
Neil Batez.
Town of Woodstock. And Town of Rochester. That's 9 members present. We have a quorum. And I expect a few more, again, to join us shortly. David, do you want to run through some of our other members present, the participant list?
Yeah, sure. We have Herb Litz is on, Greg Krupp. Let's see here, Leanne and Vernon. And let's see here, Diane Beidel, Greg Jewell, John Schulteis, Kristen Wilson, Martin Hall, Saja Ahmed, Scott Levine, and Dan Coots. Did we miss anybody while we were going through that?
Great. Well, thank you everyone again for joining us. Moving on the agenda to item number 2, call for citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments this morning?
Perhaps I can take this moment to comment on the fact that DOT has installed the 3-way light at the throughway exit in Route 32. And I have to say that there has been a palpable decrease in anxiety at that intersection that I've noticed, especially vehicles trying to hastily turn into the throughway coming south. So I appreciated the town. I'm sure is very happy with this. And you know, it's 2 or 3 months early. They said in September. So we're looking forward to further studies on this and perhaps the need for a roundabout as time goes on.
Yes, we noticed that as well. David and Dennis sent a essentially a thank you note to the project manager for a job well done. And there were a few additional stop signs that still needed to be taken down, and I believe by close of business midweek last week, those were removed as well. So thank you to the New York State DOT
Yeah.
for that action.
I'd like to just second Vernon's comments. We have a Transportation Advisory Committee meeting tonight, and the committee members are just amazed at how, after so much time and planning and discussion and studies, that the traffic light is there. It seems to be working beautifully. There's no backup getting off the throughway. I've personally gone through there a couple of times in the last few days. So kudos to all the departments involved. I mean, job well done, and everybody in this community really appreciates a safer exit and transportation for Route 32 corridor.
Excellent. Thank you.
Brian, can I bring up an issue?
Please, Jean, you have the floor.
Thank you. Town of Rosendale has asked DOT to look into the right-of-way and ownership of the sidewalks, because we have an individual who's sidewalk writing on the sidewalk. We just need to understand the legality of that, and it's, you know, been asked. It's been almost a month now that we're trying to find out what the history is of how the sidewalks were taken, that property, and to just kind of legal opinion from the DOT attorneys. So if maybe the DOT staff here could pass that along, I would appreciate that.
Supervisor,
Will do.
to whom did you submit that request?
To Dave Corrigan, who is the area supervisor.
Great. And Amy had noted that she will follow up on that. So
Thank
we
you.
appreciate that, Amy, and thank you, Supervisor. Are there any other citizens' comments this morning?
Brian, it's Mike Baden. Apologies for being late. I just wanted to let you know I was here. I actually just had a thank you to the DOT for the additional no parking signage that was put up along 4455 by the Minnewaska area. The combination of that and they have put up cones over the weekend, and the additional parking that's now available there. We have not had any issues with parking along 4455. But I just wanted to say, I'm not sure if anybody from the DOT is on the call, but just say thank you to them for being proactive in getting the additional signage up. It appears to be helping.
Great. And I had noticed that on social media as well. Thank you, Supervisor, for raising that. And I should also note that we do have a corridor study programmed for the Route 4455 corridor throughout the Minnewaska area that we hope to start at some point during this calendar year.
On a Zoom call. It's okay. You can, as long as you're not barking.
Any other citizens' comments?
You know, I've noticed the city of Kingston effectively has gotten rid of a lot of traffic lights and put up stop signs, which seems to be working very, very well. And I've noticed a number of traffic lights owned by the county in the town of Ulster that seemingly the same thing could happen to, particularly up by the mall where you turn off to go to Lowe's, that kind of thing, where stop signs would be more effective than the traffic lights. Seems like you sit at those lights for a long period of time and there's no traffic. And, you know, occasionally there is a lot of traffic, but the stop sign thing would work well. But I'd like to see the county look at some of their traffic lights and maybe survey them to see they could save some money by not paying the electric and upkeep on the lights and that kind of thing.
Thank you for your comment, John. I certainly can address that. First of all, I do not think that those signals are owned or maintained by Ulster County. We only maintain
One, I think, right?
one or two. One is in the Boyce's I'm not even sure if the Boyce's Lane one, that's not.
It's
counted.
not.
No, it's just Glasgow.
Thank you, Andrew. However, we do, speaking of UCTC studies, we do have a corridor management plan programmed for the 9W corridor in precisely the location that you're talking about, Councilman. And we can, I think in order to do this study effectively, it's looking at the commercial district in town of Ulster. You really do need to look at some of the collector roads that feed into Route 9W and the signal timing associated. There's quite a bit of turning movements and access throughout that corridor. And I think many of us have gotten the impression that the signals could potentially be managed or timed a little more efficiently. And that is what I think one of the major components of this corridor management plan can potentially address.
Well, if the county doesn't own those lights, who owns those lights?
I would have to look it up in our GIS to see exactly who owns the signals. I know on the main corridor, those are state-owned signals. On the side streets up toward the mall and Target and Walmart, I'm not sure exactly.
Because I know they're county roads.
Right, so we can look into that, and determining ownership is something that we can access our geographic information systems and figure that out and get back to you. But I think a more comprehensive analysis would need to be done in order to determine A, if the signal is necessary, and B, if the timing could potentially be improved for more efficient access. Any other citizen comments at this time? Hearing none, I will move to the next agenda item, approval of the November 24th, 2020 Policy Committee meeting summary. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Supervisor. Discussion. Hearing none. Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. And I also want to thank David Stas for, soldiering through the preparation of these. They're not meeting summaries anymore. They're essentially
Transcripts.
yeah, they're meeting. Thank you, meeting transcripts, and it's very tedious translating and preparing those meeting transcripts, which are a requirement of the open meetings law if we're doing these virtual meetings. So thank you, David, for getting us caught up on those. Moving on to item number 4, communications and announcements. I have one or two quick communications. We do have an upcoming virtual public meeting scheduled for this Thursday at 6 p.m. Presenting the draft findings of a feasibility study looking at the conversion of the county-owned Ulster and Delaware rail corridor into a rail trail. And this would be on what we're referring to as the Shandaken section. It's a roughly 5-mile corridor that goes between Big Indian and Highmount and passes adjacent to the Bel Air Beach area and the Bel Air Ski Resort and goes through the historic Horseshoe Curve on the corridor. This study has been we've been working on it for about the past 6 months with consultant Spartan Judas, who some of you may be aware, performed our feasibility analysis for the Ashokan Rail Trail. And this is essentially looking at a very similar approach and scope of work for this segment of rail trail as was applied to the Ashokan Rail Trail. So you may even want to call it a phase 2 of rail to trail conversion if it were to be pursued. So please, if you can, join us at 6 p.m. on Thursday for that virtual public meeting. We have pretty good attendance so far. I think I have 50 people registered for that meeting. Any other communications and announcements from members?
Hey, Brian, this is Dan Coots from New York State DOT. That public hearing, is it got any limitations? Do I need to pre-register, or can I just kind of pop in if I'm available?
All individuals do need to register. It's just filling out a form, and then you'll be able to pop in and out as available.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Yep, you're welcome. And we will be taking public comment during the meeting as well. One other announcement I have, it occurred to me this morning as we were going over our roll call, the biannual 2-year turnover for voting members is approaching. That occurs every June, every 2 years. So David and I will be preparing probably a postal notice for all of our 2-year voting members to notify them and thank you, all of you, for your service over the past 2 years, and to notify our other 2-year members that their opportunity is going to come up once again for the 2-year period between 2021 and 2023, I think. So please be aware, we do have one full meeting cycle. There'll be a technical committee meeting scheduled for next month, tentatively, followed by another policy committee meeting, and that will be the last rotation for this year's group of 2-year voting members. Any other communications and announcements before we go on to new business?
Brian, can I just ask you about the 2-year switch? Is the census going to affect that at all, or is that, because I know it was based somewhat on population, right? I mean, is that going to change anything?
Not at this time. The original membership was established in part based on population of each municipality. I think a few other factors as well. And that, of course, was established and written into the UCTC operating procedures when the MPO was formed in 2003. So while that methodology may have been used to create the turnover, it's not, for lack of a better word, codified in our operating procedures. So we could potentially revisit it if the populations change significantly in the metropolitan planning area. I don't believe they're going to change that significantly. I think the general proportion and share of population across our municipalities will generally remain about the same. We are anticipating a slight increase in the county population, but no significant changes.
Thank you.
And I do have a brief presentation. David and I have a brief presentation at the end of our meeting today to talk about some potential changes to the metropolitan planning area based on 2020 census numbers. All right, any other communications and announcements? Great. For those of you who joined us a little late, I did want to make note, our director, Dennis Doyle, is not able to attend today. He did have a personal conflict, but he'll be with us probably again during our next meeting. So I'll be acting as chair this morning. All right, moving on to new business under item number 5. That's item A, UCTC Resolution 2021-4, amendment to the UCTC Federal Fiscal Year 2024 TIP to add a new New York State DOT project, PIN 801847, as shown in attachment 1. Can I have a motion for discussion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Who was that second?
Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. I can provide a little bit of background and explanation here. Of course, this is a new addition, a new project addition to the Transportation Improvement Program, and therefore our operation procedures stipulate that we must have technical and policy committee approval, along with 15-day public comment. We did open a 15-day public comment period. We did not receive any public comments on this action. As you can see on the screen, This project is to add a shared use path in the area of the Onteora Public School, high school, that will travel from, I believe the specific project boundaries are yet to be determined, as this is a brand new project and there is no design, but it will go from the vicinity of the high school down to the intersection of Route 28A, where it will then ideally join some project improvements that the Department of Environmental Protection will be performing at that intersection and to the bridge. And then beyond that is the trailhead for the Ashoka Rail Trail. So again, specific project boundaries I don't believe are determined yet, but the purpose is to provide a safe connection from the high school over across that commercial district. Trying to think if there are any other points of note. This would be on the south side of Route 28A. If you can picture that in your head, that's essentially the side of the commercial district opposite of the high school on Route 28. Any other comments from the New York State Department of Transportation on this new project?
As you were talking, I heard everything that I wanted to say, so you covered it all.
Great, great. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions or comments on the purpose of this resolution and tip amendment? Hearing none. Any opposed? Hearing no opposed, the motion carried and approved. Thank you. We will make that action on the Transportation Improvement Program. All right, that's the only new business that we had for today's meeting. As I mentioned, this will likely be a brief meeting, but we do have two other important announcements that we wanted to provide to our members this morning. The first is regarding a new grant opportunity that was announced a few weeks ago called RAISE, Discretionary Grants. And RAISE stands for the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Program. Those of you who've been paying attention over the past few years, this was formerly known as the BUILD program under the Trump administration, and previous to that, it was known as the TIGER program. These are very significant grant opportunities in the sense that the project minimum is between $1 to $5 million. The rules have adjusted somewhat over the years. Let me explain. It's $1 million for a rural area project minimum, and a $5 million project minimum for urban areas. The Kingston urbanized area, by this definition, is actually considered to be rural by the definition used for this grant program. So it would be, if a municipality were interested in applying, it would be a minimum of a $1 million grant application. And I believe a maximum of either 10 or 20 million. I apologize for not having that number in front of me. The purpose of these grants in this grant program is to really spur significant economic development within our metropolitan regions. New York State has received a number of them successfully over the years. They are very involved. There's a cost benefit analysis that requires a fair amount of effort put forth by the municipality. I know that Kingston several years ago applied for a TIGER grant, and while not successful, it was certainly a learning experience, and I believe that the actual application did score very well. It just was not selected. Any application put forth by municipalities really needs to be coordinated, not only with the MPO, but also with our regional New York State Department of Transportation, and ideally with the Albany Bureau of the New York State Department of Transportation and our federally elected officials. Without that level of coordination and support, it's not likely that your TIGER application will really make it to that final level because of the level of importance and scrutiny that these grant applications are given. I believe that this Secretary of Transportation does do personal review of each of these applications themselves after significant vetting by their staff. So there are a number of very useful webinars that are scheduled. The first of which I believe is tomorrow. So if you follow the links that David has provided up on the screen, you can learn more about those webinars and the grant specifics of that grant program. Any questions regarding the RAISE program? And one final point, this is not new money per se. This is actually, I believe these dollars were appropriated quite a few years back by previous administrations, but the new Biden administration has essentially put their own stamp on the program by giving it a new name, and also I believe, as stated in the press release, giving it some new criteria for selection of projects, and that those criteria include projects that can demonstrate improvements to racial equity, reduce impacts of climate change, and create good paying jobs. So that is the explanation of the new name, but essentially same program. Any questions, comments on the RAISE program? All right, thank you. And then, yes.
Question.
Yes.
Would the county be interested or able, or this organization in applying to maybe increase broadband throughout the county where we're having some gaps?
Well, the RAISE program is, it's a transportation
Has to be, I mean,
grant
it's
program.
okay.
So broadband access is not an eligible project under the rules of the RAISE program. So you might want to talk to Dennis when he becomes available about access to broadband.
They want it to be, increase economic development. So, what kind of transportation projects are we talking about that could putting
Right. Having not gone over the grant application in detail, I can only guess as to what sort of projects might be eligible, but I can tell you from years past, access to freight and ports, transit projects, projects that increase mobility and access to commerce are the types of projects that would be eligible under this this call for projects.
Would trails be able to?
Trails would be. I know Dutchess County has applied for trails, and I know the city of Kingston did apply for improvements to the Uptown Street network, which included sidewalks and streets in their original application, among other things.
I don't think one town or community really has enough to do for that, but if it was incorporated into how to connect some of these little gaps that are in the trail system, or to improve some of them and accessibility in some of them, but to just make it for one community or another, I don't think is strong enough.
Yeah, I agree. It is a challenging and highly competitive grant application. Some other successful projects that have been approved in the past, City of Rochester managed to close off and bring up to grade a section of interstate highway. And that was a very significant project to fill the inner loop in the city of Rochester. I believe the city of Buffalo received significant money for a similar project, and Syracuse as well has been looking into it for removal of interstates. I mean, these are very large scale projects that require quite a bit of regional coordination. So without that coordination, and without, I might add, significant preliminary planning already in place, it would be difficult, I think, for us to put together a competitive and cohesive application for this time, but it's never too early to start thinking about this. And this is where the Unified Planning Work Program and our corridor studies can be really helpful in starting to formulate consensus and identify needs in the Ulster County area. I know the city of Kingston utilized the Uptown Transportation Plan that was completed back in 2009 to begin preparation of their Tiger grant. And even that plan, as detailed as it was, this is a plan about that thick, with detailed counts and measurements throughout the Uptown area. I recall working with the grants department in the city. There was not enough detail provided in our study to answer all their questions comprehensively. So it is a challenge, but no, you're right, Jean, that successful application would need significant coordination.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments on Raise before we go into the next item under old business? Next item is the US Census 2020 urbanized area adjustments. This is a pretty significant issue that we are happy to bring to the attention of our members. Going back to the beginning of this calendar year, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations in New York State, which consists of all 14 MPOs across the state, the directors meet regularly, and this issue was brought to our attention by our national organization, AMPO, that a new rule is being proposed by the US Department of Commerce, Bureau of the Census, that has been published in the Federal Register, proposing to change the criteria that is used to define urbanized areas in the United States. To take a step back, urbanized areas have been defined using two different types of, a variety of criteria with two different definitions going back to Census 2000. The first definition is an urban cluster, and those are, for lack of a more detailed definition, essentially our smaller villages. Village of Ellenville in Ulster County is an urban cluster. And those are areas, I believe, defined as having 2,500 persons or more in a defined space. And then urbanized areas are defined as essentially urban areas with a population of 50,000 or more in a defined, cohesive, coterminous geographic space. And there are a number of criteria that the US Census Bureau uses to define what constitutes an urbanized area. In 2000, for example, the Kingston urbanized area came to the level of 50,000 and it was essentially what created the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the UCTC. So today, under Census 2020, the Department of Commerce is proposing new criteria that would get away from utilizing the 50,000 people threshold and use housing units as the primary criterion for determining what constitutes an urbanized area. The Federal Register also proposes to do away with the urban cluster definition, which doesn't have significance to metropolitan planning organizations and transportation funding that I'm aware of. So I'm not going to talk about the urban cluster issue as much as I am going to talk about the urbanized area issue this morning. Some other points that we've been cobbling together as we've sat through various webinars and having discussions with the other directors statewide. The transition to using housing units as opposed to persons is considered to be, and I'm quoting now the Census Bureau, a more direct measure of the developed landscape. And I would generally agree with that. What the Census Bureau uses is a term called hops and jumps in order to define how these urbanized areas connect. If you think about, and David has some maps that he's going to show us in just a minute. If you think about the Kingston, greater Kingston urbanized area and how it relates to some of our surrounding areas, the Kingston urbanized area includes Rosendale, Hurley, as well as Saugerties, and in 2010, even extended out, you can see here, to go up the 375 corridor to include the hamlet of the business district in Woodstock. The reason why, we know when we travel through these areas, they're essentially rural.
You left out Ulster.
And that, yes, definitely includes the town of Ulster as well. The gaps in between some of these spaces are largely rural because of the geography of Ulster County. We have these valley areas and undevelopable steep sloped areas. And that's where the hops and jumps rule comes into effect. Under the rules of Census 2010, you can have a distance of up to 2.5 miles where the urbanized areas, the developed areas, don't connect with other urban spaces. So you can have gaps, and they would allow a 2.5 mile jump, which is what essentially why we include Saugerties and why we include Woodstock in the Kingston urbanized area. Thank you, Dave. Dave's showing that big jump going up the corridor into the town of Woodstock and Saugerties. And this also affects Rosendale.
One thing, if you're looking at the map, the green represents the existing urbanized area as defined by the 2010 census. The red shows areas that would be considered urban underneath the new housing density change.
Right. So there are quite a few arcane details involved in this issue and how these boundaries are drawn, and then the steps and implications for metropolitan planning organizations. We did put together a very short briefing on the issue that is on the meeting. It's a document on the meeting webpage. That's AMPO's summary, and we use that information to prepare our own summary that Dave has up here. This is on, again, with the meeting packet for today. The big issue is, with these proposed changes, if they are enacted, and that is an if, this is a proposed change at this point in time, it may have a very significant effect on the Kingston urbanized area. The Kingston urbanized area may essentially cease to exist under these new definitions. And that is because the proposal is to decrease the jump distance from 2.5 miles to 1.5 miles. We had a one-on-one presentation with the Federal Highway Administration. Our rep in Albany and our rep in Washington, D.C. gave a great presentation to staff for the entire Mid-Hudson TMA on what these potential implications were. And they walked us through it, and we did essentially our own case studies. And it would appear that if that distance is decreased, Saugerties would no longer meet the criteria to be included, to be included in the Kingston urbanized area. That's close to 20,000 people up in that greater Saugerties area. If we lose Saugerties, we may very well no longer be an urbanized area. The implications of that are several. The big ones is that it would directly impact funding for our transit system. Transit funding, as we know through the many resolutions that this body has passed over the years on an annual basis, we get a very significant amount of money for the Kingston urbanized area to fund the Ulster County area transit system. If it's no longer defined as an urbanized area, we would have to rely on rural funds. We're making a number of assumptions at this point in time, because I want to emphasize there are many unknowns as to what the exact implications might be, but it could very well impact our transit funding. And it could also impact funding for the MPO itself in terms of planning funds that are allocated based on the urbanized areas and populations. So that is a very brief summary of our understanding of what these potential rule changes may mean. I did sit through a recorded webinar yesterday that was put forth by the Census Bureau and the Federal Highway Administration. And I did hear something of interest in that the FHWA rep, who is a statistician and demographer in Washington, actually, no, they're based out of New Jersey, did say that under the new rules, MPOs do not go away, even if the urbanized area decreases. Although he did not provide any significant details regarding that point. And I have reached out to him to request further clarification. So that in a nutshell is the issue. It is an issue of concern. In terms of next steps, what the MPO staff is considering at this time is continuing to learn about the issue. There are multiple webinars on this issue coming out on a regular basis, and the discussion is ongoing among our partner members across New York State. But we believe what our next step will be to prepare a position paper for the chair of the Transportation Council, Patrick Ryan, to submit as a comment to the Federal Register. You'll note on the brief summary, it's essentially the white paper that we prepared. There is a link to the Federal Register language. It's exhaustive. If you're really interested, you can find everything you need to know through that link. And the schedule for comment and next steps that the U.S. Department of Commerce will be taking is shown on our brief page as well. So it's not an insignificant issue, but again, at this time, we're really, there are many unknowns, but we do not plan on just sitting idly by to let this take place if it's going to have a significant impact, particularly on our funding for our transit system and for our MPO. And again, some of the suggested solutions that we may raise in our comment to the Federal Register are listed on the white paper. One of them is to just clarify that existing MPOs be held harmless, that whatever new rules are established are fine, but going forward, but essentially existing MPOs in urbanized areas could be grandfathered in going forward. And we also put forth a few other potential proposals. So please take a look at our memo. Take a look at some of the resources that David's posted online, and just by Googling them, the Census Bureau and the Federal Highway Administration have been great about putting out information and providing recordings of their presentations on these potential rule changes. That is essentially my summary. If there are any questions or comment this time, I'd be happy to entertain them or try to. We will certainly keep you posted. And again, if the MPO staff and our chair reach an agreement and decide to comment, we'll certainly share that correspondence with our members. And we also will be reaching out or encouraging our chair to reach out to our congressional representatives on this issue as well. Congressman Delgado is a member of the Transportation Committee and does certainly have some sway and input on these issues in Washington, D.C. So we'll be happy to keep you posted as this issue continues to evolve. All right. Going into the final two items under old business. Upcoming meetings, I already mentioned our U&D meeting is this Thursday. Please attend if you have the time, drop in. It should be an interesting presentation with some good pictures of a very scenic and beautiful corridor in Shandaken. Project updates. I guess before I go into our final project updates, are there any other important upcoming meetings that our members might want to raise in the next month or so? Great. And if you do have announcements like upcoming meetings, please let David and I know through email. We're happy to notify our members through our distribution list. Finally, project updates. I'm very pleased to present to you the final revised long-range transportation plan. This is our reformatted document. The policy board approved this document back in September, and then we went to work on reformatting the content. So all the content is the same in this document, but it really has been gussied up, and all of the illustrations have been, I think, improved significantly. And it is also, most importantly, now ADA accessible. So individuals with visual impairments are able to access all of the content in this document going forward. So I just put this document up online this morning, and we will be doing a small printing of the new document and distributing those to our members. I think it's a really useful desktop compendium or reference manual for information on the transportation system. It also includes some really key nuggets about demographics and housing and economics in the greater Ulster County area. So please take a look at it. Hope you enjoy it. And we'll be doing that printing probably later this spring and summer. And we'll find a way to distribute hard copies to all of our members. Any other comments on that? Dave, and there's a question.
Vernon, I think.
Yes, this transpired during this period when so much attention was being paid on the state level to CLCPA and climate change. Is this incorporated very thoroughly or in any extent in this plan? I mean, to go to 2045.
Yes. Yes, it certainly is. And we've mentioned this before during our presentations. The long-range transportation plan is a very regimented document and requirement of MPOs. The components of the plan are laid out in great detail in the metropolitan planning rules and regulations.
I see.
And that said, there is no requirement to include a discussion on climate change. However, we did include one, and that's Chapter 5 Dave has up on the screen right now, the Sustainability, Climate Change, and Resilience section. So this is where you'll find, I think, a useful narrative discussion on the issue. I think it frames the issue. Transportation is the biggest contributor of greenhouse gases in the United States and in New York State when you look at all factors. We do also include an estimate, it is a rough estimate, of emissions over time in Ulster County. And we use our vehicle miles traveled along with the mix of known vehicles on the road to estimate exactly how much transportation is emitting on an annual basis in terms of greenhouse gases. And that's shown online on the page right now as well. So that was, I think, a big step forward for us. We also tried to include whatever information we could gather on solutions and transitions given the state's pledge to become, I believe, carbon neutral by, I think it's 2050 or 2045. Apologies for not having those specifics in front of me. And we also do have an estimate of the number of EVs on the road, and also talk about the implications in terms of transportation resiliency and a changing climate on the transportation system.
I'm not sure if everyone noticed, but yesterday, I believe the New York State Senate took up a measure which was already passed in the Assembly, to require that all new vehicles be electric. That's cars and trucks by 2035. So that's going to play into this too, I think, in time.
It is a rapidly evolving subject. I think in this next decade, we're going to see a massive swing in the share of vehicles on the road, swinging from essentially gas-powered vehicles over to electric vehicles. The infrastructure is being developed as we speak nationwide. And I think if the incentives are there, the financial incentives are there, we'll start to see that transition occur at a more rapid pace. And already the auto manufacturers have certainly recognized the need and the trend as well. And I'm reading more and more every day about how we're really on the cusp of a significant shift in the types of vehicles that are going to be traveling on our highways.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So please, again, take a look at the document. It's not actually linked yet. It is on our website. I'll get that information and our web links active within the next few days. But please take a look. We're pretty proud of it. It's taken a lot of work. And we used as many local photographers as we could for some of these photographs.
Brian,
Yes.
just a little something I'd like to add about the electric vehicles. Rosendale is going to be getting our first electric police car this week.
That's exciting.
Yes, and I believe it might be the first in New York State that we're a police department.
And did you receive any type of special grant to
Yes,
purchase that?
yes, I got a member from when Senator Metzger was in office. We got $30,000 from him. So it's taken this long to put everything into place, but yes.
That's great. It's great to hear. And of course, we've mentioned before, UCAT will be taking possession of the first 3 fully electric transit vehicles. We're purchasing 3 35-foot electric vehicles for use on our routes locally in Ulster County. Hopefully those will all be up and running by the end of this year. We're planning for the charging infrastructure right now. I mean, being an innovator, there is a lot of risk involved because there are so many unknowns with the technology.
Yeah.
So
This is a Tesla, by the way.
great.
Yeah, so it's a little different. We had to go to somebody that was willing to make the changes to make it a police vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
We found somebody who's very excited about getting his hands on a Tesla to be able to do that, and hopefully that will open the door for others.
Well, that's great. From what I've seen on the Teslas that I've seen driving on the highway, I don't think they'll have any trouble pursuing other vehicles because they're pretty zippy out there. They accelerate very quickly, which is another benefit of the electric motors. So that's great. And we'll keep you posted on our transit electrification transition as well. I think at a certain point in time, we may be able to provide members with a more detailed presentation and overview. Our Department of the Environment did complete an electrification study sponsored through NYSERDA that we assisted them as well as UCAT in preparing that draft plan. And we also have, there's a lot going on in terms of preparation for a transition to an electric fleet. Other project updates. Dave, do you have anything to add on the countywide crash study?
right now we're going through the, we've done a contract extension for the final, for 2 more months, where you're going through the highway safety manual methodology to look at the top locations that we have identified. We've identified an array of different types of locations, rural, urban, and different issues that are faced at each of them. And we're going to be identifying countermeasures at those locations and providing benefit cost analysis on improvements for those locations.
Great. And thank you everyone for participating and providing their input on formulating and drilling down on those locations. We just completed a study with Passero Associates on the location, a site selection analysis for an expanded UCAT storage facility. That project plan document is on our project website. I think we summarized at the last technical committee meeting, the study identified a parcel adjacent to the existing UCAT facility, essentially across the street, as the preferred location if and when UCAT should build an expanded facility. The facility would cost so anywhere between $10 to $20 million, depending on how you phase the structure and complete the structure. If you do just a simple uninsulated open air facility, that could be as low as 8 million, I think, is what was projected. But if you do a fully constructed, insulated facility with all necessary bays, a full build out, that could be as high as 20 million. So clearly cost will be an issue and identifying funds will be important. And then this is another issue that loops around back to our urbanized area discussion. So that study is available online, and we will also be pursuing funds for designing that structure in partnership with UCAT and the transportation management area. That is the next step, to come up with designs, because our transit system is does still have many vehicles that are sitting outside and need to be housed indoors. Other than that, we are now transitioning, after putting quite a bit of effort into our long-range transportation plan and some of our other studies. We're closing those and transitioning to new studies. We have an RFP is now open for a resiliency study. This is going to look at a risk assessment of our transportation system. We're talking roads, bridges, trails, transit facilities, highway maintenance facilities, to look at their susceptibility to levels of risk associated with climate change, flooding, and weather events, and various other implications that may affect them. So that study hopefully will be under contract within the next 3 months. We're reviewing applications right now. David is also working on a study to focus on rail safety in the city of Kingston, primarily in the city of Kingston. We have, I believe it's 8 at-grade crossings, 6 to 8 at-grade crossings in the city of Kingston. So we're looking at issues of reducing trespass on the CSX right-of-way, as well as intersection safety where local roads traverse the CSX West Shore Railroad. And then other studies that we may be pursuing this year include the 9W study that I mentioned earlier, 9W corridor study, also the routes 4455 study, corridor management plan, as well as a wayfinding study for the trail system in Ulster County. So those are 3 other scopes that we will be developing in the next several weeks. Those are all the project updates that I have at this time. And that concludes all the elements or items rather on our agenda. Are there any other comments from our members before we move to adjournment? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move.
That's Vern. Second?
Second, Andrew.
Thank you. Great. And I don't think anyone's going to be opposed to that motion. So thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 25th of the UCTC Technical Committee. I do not have any agenda items at this time, but stay posted. We'll let you know if that meeting will be necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy this beautiful spring day. Hope to see you Thursday.
Everybody be safe, stay healthy.
Thanks. You as
Thanks,
well.
everybody.
Thanks, Brian. Well done.
Thank you.